In 1946, just a year after the Second World War ended, a remarkable British war film premiered. It was called Theirs is the Glory, and it remains one of the most unique and haunting productions ever committed to film. It tells the story of the Battle of Arnhem, a pivotal moment in the disastrous Operation Market Garden. But this was no Hollywood dramatization, no generic war movie filled with actors and staged explosions. This was a reenactment by the very men who had fought there. No actors, no studio backlots, only soldiers, returning to the ruins where they had lived, fought, and watched their comrades die. The film was the brainchild of producer Louis H. Jackson and director Brian Desmond Hurst, who believed that no actor could ever capture the raw emotion, the fatigue, or the sheer realism of war the way the actual veterans could. It was a radical idea. The war had only just ended. The wounds, physical and emotional, were still fresh, and yet over 200 veterans of the 1st Airborne Division agreed to take part. They donned their uniforms once more and returned to Arnhem to reenact the battle as they remembered it. Filming took place on the actual battle sites in Oosterbeek, Arnhem, and along the Rhine. The damage from 1944 still scarred the landscape. Bombed-out houses, shattered bridges, cratered roads, none of it had to be fabricated. The town was the set. It's almost surreal watching the film today, knowing that these were real men walking through real wreckage, not long after surviving a brutal and ultimately doomed military operation. Operation Market Garden had been a bold plan to end the war early, an airborne assault deep into occupied territory, seizing bridges across the Netherlands. But it failed. The British 1st Airborne Division was dropped too far from its objectives, faced unexpectedly heavy German resistance, and was eventually encircled at Arnhem. Of the 10,000 men who landed, only about 2,000 made it back. The rest were killed, wounded, or captured. Theirs is the Glory doesn't shy away from this reality. It presents the operation with a grim sense of honor, not triumph. Where did all the equipment come from? The British Army provided extensive logistical support. Veterans brought their own gear. Uniforms, gliders, weapons, and jeeps, all authentic. No soundstage could match the realism of filming on location with the exact hardware used in battle. Even the glider pilot regiment, which had suffered terribly in Arnhem, contributed men and aircraft to restage key moments, such as the initial landings in Dutch fields. The film was made on a budget of around £100,000, a considerable sum at the time, but modest by industry standards. The cost was spent mostly on travel, logistics, and coordination. There were no expensive actor salaries, no set construction, and minimal editing. The power of the film lies in its simplicity and in its truth. Critically, Theirs is the Glory was received as both a powerful tribute and a public service. It gave British audiences something no other film could: closure. Many people had lost family at Arnhem. Some of the men on screen were household names in their regiments. Others were anonymous heroes. It wasn't a story of victory. It was a story of sacrifice. It was also a box office success. In the United Kingdom, it resonated with a war-weary public still processing years of rationing, grief, and uncertainty. Internationally, it earned praise for its bold approach. No one had ever dared to film something quite like it. Even in America, where big-budget war dramas were starting to take shape, critics were struck by the raw honesty and unflinching realism of this quiet British film. And yet, for all its success, Theirs is the Glory has been overshadowed in later decades, especially by Richard Attenborough's 1977 epic, A Bridge Too Far. That film had an enormous budget, a Hollywood cast, and recreated the same battle with cinematic polish. But ask the veterans which film truly captured the feeling of Arnhem, and they'll point to "Theirs is the glory" every time. There's a difference between performance and memory. The men in "Theirs is the glory" weren't just reenacting war, they were reliving it. That emotional weight is visible in their faces, in the way they move, in the way they stand in silence on familiar ground. It's not dramatic acting, it's trauma, grief, pride, and loss. The film stands today not just as a piece of cinema, but as a memorial, a time capsule, a living tribute made by the survivors for the fallen. There has never been another film quite like it, and likely never will be. In an age of CGI and scripted spectacle, "Theirs is the glory" reminds us of what can happen when truth is allowed to speak for itself. For those interested in war history, in authenticity, and in memory, not just entertainment, this film remains essential viewing. In 1946, just a year after the Second World War ended, a remarkable British war